What if the moment you feared most wasn't torture, starvation, or humiliation but kindness? What if your enemy didn't break you with chains, but with vanilla ice cream and Coca-Cola? The summer of 1943 didn't just scorch the earth, it scorched souls. Across Europe, golden wheat fields turned to ash under the weight of retreat, the air thick with smoke and the metallic scent of spent shells. And through that haze, a slow, silent procession moved. Women. Not soldiers trained for battle, not hardened spies but clerks, typists, nurses. Women who had once stitched wounds in field hospitals or typed speeches in marble halls. They walked now as prisoners, their uniforms still creased with the precision of bureaucracy, their eyes hollowed by years of war. They had been warned, whispered to, screamed at, that captivity in America would mean starvation, cages, degradation. That the Allies didn't just want to defeat Germany, they wanted to erase it. So when the train finally stopped and the gates of the camp swung open, they braced for horror. What they found instead was a nightmare of a different kind. Clean wooden barracks, laundry flapping in the breeze, the distant crack of a baseball bat, and in the mess hall, a machine, humming, pouring pale, cold sweetness into bowls. Ice cream, served beside meatloaf, beside potatoes, beside bottles of something dark and gleaming, Coca-Cola, standing in rows like soldiers of sugar, condensation rolling down their glass like tears of abundance. Among them walked Lisa, Lottbauer, 22, a Red Cross nurse whose hands had trembled over too many wounds that never closed. She kept her gaze forward, her braid damp with sweat, her nails digging crescent moons into her palms. To her right, Anna Hoffman, older, sharper, a woman who had once transcribed Goebbels' speeches in Berlin's grand halls. Her silence wasn't empty, it was armor. When Lisa's eyes fell on the ice cream, her breath caught. It looked impossible, like something from a dream she wasn't allowed to have. She ate slowly, deliberately, as if savoring each bite might be treason. The vanilla melted too fast, fleeting, fragile, and for the first time in years she felt something unfamiliar. Guilt for enjoying it. Anna, meanwhile, stabbed her spoon into the bowl like it owed her blood. "It's a trick," she hissed. "They want us soft, compliant, grateful." But even as she said it, her eyes flickered, just for a second, toward the sweating Coca-Cola bottle, curiosity, hunger, something human she couldn't yet name. The camp wasn't paradise. The barbed wire made sure of that. Watchtowers loomed, guards patrolled, rules were rules. But within those fences, life bloomed in strange, defiant ways. 3 meals a day, more calories than their families back home could dream of. English lessons, sewing circles, baseball games watched through the fence like foreign theater. And always, the Coca-Cola. Cold, fizzy, unapologetically American. Lisa found herself drawn to Heinz Maylor, a guard with Bavarian roots and a clumsy grasp of German. He didn't leer, didn't gloat. He explained baseball like it was poetry. 3 strikes, you're out, but if you run fast, you're safe. There was no malice in his voice, only patience, as if he were gently asking them, what if the world isn't what they told you? Captain Donovan watched it all from the sidelines, arms folded, shadowed smile playing on his lips. He'd seen this before. The moment propaganda cracked, not from speeches, not from guns, but from a hot meal. "We fight wars with bullets," he'd say to his men, "but we win them with hamburgers." And he was right. Each scoop of ice cream, each sip of Coke was a tiny revolution, softening edges, blurring lines, turning enemies into something else. Anna refused to bend. She gathered her loyalists in the barracks at night, whispering like conspirators. "They fatten us like livestock," she'd say, "to show their people how civilized they are. Don't be fooled. A cage gilded in sugar is still a cage." She studied the guards, the way their hands rested on rifles, the way spotlights swept the yard. She saw threat in every smile, but even Anna, had moments. Moments when the scent of cinnamon from the kitchen drifted through the window. Moments when swing music spilled from a radio and her foot tapped, just once before she caught herself. Moments when she laughed, truly laughed, at a joke about Germany losing the war, not to tanks, but to vanilla. And then she'd freeze. Shame would flood her, because laughter here felt like betrayal. Every bite of pie carried the ghost of her starving nephew. Every sip of soda echoed with her mother's last letter, ink smudged with tears, begging for news, for food, for hope. Lisa stopped writing home the truth. How could she tell them she was eating better as a prisoner than she ever had as a free woman? The guilt sat heavy in her chest, heavier than any ration pack. Then came Christmas. The Americans went all out, garlands, a tree strung with popcorn, tiny wrapped gifts of soap and candy. And on every table, Coca-Cola bottles, wearing Santa hats. The absurdity was almost cruel. Some women laughed, some cried. Lisa raised her bottle slowly, the fizz popping like sleigh bells in her ears. Across the room, Heinz caught her eye and smiled. "Frohe Weihnachten," he said, his accent clumsy but his warmth real. Anna refused to touch hers. Later, she gripped Lisa's wrist. "Don't let them rewrite what Christmas means," she whispered, voice trembling. "Don't let them make you forget." But forgetting was the one thing Lisa couldn't do. The letters had stopped coming. No word from Hamburg, no word from her mother. The silence was louder than any bomb. And yet, here she was, full, warm, safe. The contradiction was tearing her apart. Was this mercy or manipulation? Was sweetness a weapon or a gift? Spring 1945 arrived not with flowers, but with whispers. Germany was falling. Cities burned. Fronts collapsed. The camp, once an island of strange comfort, now vibrated with tension. Guards moved quicker. Radios crackled with urgent news. Heinz no longer joked. His eyes lingered on Lisa longer, heavier, as if he knew time was running out. One night, he passed her a Coke. His fingers brushed hers. Neither spoke. Nothing needed to be said. Captain Donovan watched the women differently now, not as prisoners but as futures, women who would soon walk into a broken homeland, carrying memories of America in their bones. What stories would they tell? What truths would they keep? Then the announcement. Germany had surrendered. The war was over. The guards cheered. The prisoners stood frozen. For Lisa, it felt like both salvation and sentence. Home was rubble, hunger, silence. Anna gripped. Her arm, nails biting skin. "They'll send us back to nothing," she spat. "All this just a show." Don't let them win your heart. But it was too late. Hearts had already been claimed, not by force but by flavor, by laughter, by the unbearable lightness of being human again. The final night came. A feast, roast chicken, cream pies, and center stage, Coca-Cola, rows of it, gleaming, waiting. Captain Donovan stood. "Tomorrow you go home," he said, voice steady. "Tonight we share a meal, not of captivity but of possibility." Lisa unscrewed her cap. The hiss echoed through the silent hall, sharp, final, like the release of something long trapped. One by one the women followed, even Anna. She lifted her bottle high, voice cracking with fury and something softer, grief, maybe, or surrender. "For Germany," she said, and drank. Not in celebration, not in gratitude, but in acknowledgement that even she could not resist the pull of sweetness, that even the hardest heart could be touched by something as simple as cold, fizzy kindness. At dawn they boarded trucks. Each woman handed one last gift, a single bottle of Coca-Cola. Cold, heavy, real. Lisa held hers to her chest like a promise. Anna sneered. "Sugar." "Water," she muttered. But her grip was white-knuckled, desperate. As the camp shrank behind them, fences fading into the horizon, Lisa took one last sip. It burned, it sparkled. It was too sweet, too fleeting. And in that moment she understood the wire had never been the prison. The real cage. Was the choice waiting for her beyond the ocean? Would she carry bitterness like Anna? Or would she carry that possibility? The world was broken, but somewhere in the ruins a promise had been made, a promise as fragile and explosive as the fizz on her tongue, and though she didn't yet have the words, she knew. She would spend the rest of her life chasing its echo. They survived the war, but could they survive the peace? They came home with full stomachs, but empty hearts, and in their hands, a bottle of Coca-Cola, the sweetest, most dangerous souvenir of all. The ship that carried them back to Germany didn't just cross the Atlantic, it crossed into another world. A world where the sky still smelled like ash, where silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, broken only by the crunch of boots on rubble or the whimper of a child too weak to cry loud. Lisa Lott Bauer stood at the railing, her fingers wrapped tight around the cold glass bottle they'd given her, the last bottle of Coca-Cola. Condensation had long dried, dust now clung to its curves. But she hadn't opened it, not yet. It wasn't just soda anymore. It was memory. It was guilt. It was a question she couldn't answer. Was I changed, or was I broken? Behind her, Anna Hoffman stood rigid, arms crossed, eyes scanning the horizon like she expected snipers in the smoke. She'd thrown her bottle overboard the first night. Let the ocean swallow their poison, she'd muttered. But now weeks later, Lisa caught her staring at Lisa's bottle. Not with anger, but with something quieter, something like longing. Hamburg greeted them not with flags or fanfare, but with ruins. Buildings slumped like tired ghosts. Streets were rivers of broken brick. Children with hollow eyes followed them silently, hands outstretched not for toys, but for bread. Lisa's first steps on German soil felt like walking into a grave she'd been spared from. She searched for her mother's face in every crowd, every line for rations, every shadowed doorway. Nothing. Just silence and hunger. Everywhere. Hunger. And now, the refugee center. They were handed thin soup and a single slice of bread, black with sawdust hard as stone. Lisa stared at it. Her stomach growled, not from emptiness but from memory. She remembered the mess hall, the ice cream melting on her tongue, the Coke fizzing like laughter in her throat. She almost vomited, not from disgust, from shame. She had eaten better in captivity than her own people were eating in freedom. What kind of victory was that? Anna, meanwhile, became a soldier again, not of the Reich but of resistance. She organized women in the rubble, taught them to barter, to hide food, to lie to Allied inspectors. "They gave you sugar," she'd snap at Lisa in the barracks. They now shared, a crumbling attic with a leaking roof. "We need steel, we need pride, we need to remember who we are." She spoke at gatherings, her voice sharp as glass, warning against American seduction. "They didn't defeat us with bombs," she'd say. "They defeated us with butter, with baseball, with bottles of brown poison that make you forget your own name." Some women nodded, others looked away. Many had been in camps too. Many had tasted the sweetness, and many has missed it, quietly, secretly, like a sin they couldn't confess. Lisa didn't speak at gatherings. She didn't organize. She walked, block by block, rubble by rubble, searching, always searching, until one rainy Tuesday she found her. Her mother, not in a hospital, not in a shelter, but in a basement, curled on a cot, skin like paper, ribs like piano keys. She was alive, barely. Lisa fell to her knees. Her mother's eyes fluttered open. No tears, no scream, just a whisper. "You came back fat." Lisa didn't flinch. She unwrapped the last of her American rations, chocolate bar she'd been saving, and pressed it into her mother's hand. Her mother stared at it, then slowly, she ate it, without a word, without thanks. Lisa didn't cry. She just sat there, watching, listening to the quiet crunch of chocolate between teeth that had forgotten sweetness. That night, she opened her suitcase and took out the bottle, the Coca-Cola. still sealed, still cold from memory. She stared at it. Then she placed it gently beside her mother's cot. Like an offering, like a confession, like a question, is this what saved me nor what destroyed me? Weeks passed. Winter came early. Food grew scarcer, hope thinner. And then the bottle disappeared. Lisa didn't ask, didn't accuse. She just knew. One morning she found her mother sitting by the window, sunlight catching the glass in her hand. Empty now, just a few drops left at the bottom. Her mother didn't look at her, didn't apologize, just whispered, "It tasted like the world before the war." Lisa sat beside her, took her hand, and for the first time since returning, she didn't feel guilt. She felt peace. Not the peace of victory, not the peace of surrender, but the peace of understanding. That survival wasn't about purity. It wasn't about refusing sweetness to prove your loyalty. It was about holding on to whatever kept you human, even if it came from the enemy. Anna found out, of course. She stormed into the attic, eyes blazing. "You gave it to her," she hissed, "after everything? After the lies, the propaganda. You let her drink their poison." Lisa didn't argue, didn't defend. She just looked at Anna, really looked, and saw what she hadn't seen before. Not hatred, not strength, but fear. Anna was terrified. Terrified that if she softened, even for a second, the world she'd built inside herself would collapse. That if she admitted the Coke tasted good, she'd have to admit the Americans weren't monsters. And if they weren't monsters, then what were they? And what did that make her? Lisa stood, walked to her suitcase, pulled out something else, a small notebook filled with sketches, drawings of the camp, the ice cream machine, the baseball field. Hines explaining rules with his hands, Captain Donovan smiling in the sun. She handed it to Anna. "I didn't draw the fences," Lisa said softly. "I drew the moments between them, because those were real too." Anna stared at the pages. Her hands trembled. She didn't speak, didn't cry, but she didn't throw the book away either. She took it and walked out. Without a word. Spring came again, slowly, painfully. Green shoots pushed through the rubble. Children laughed. Real laughter, not the nervous kind. Markets reopened, tiny stalls selling. Potatoes, onions, sometimes even eggs. And then, one day, Lisa saw it, in a shop window, dusty, dented, but unmistakable. A bottle of Coca-Cola. Someone had smuggled it in, probably from an American base, probably sold for a week's rations. She stood there, heart pounding. Then she walked in, placed her week's bread coupons on the counter. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" he asked. She nodded. She took the bottle home, didn't drink it, didn't open it. She placed it on the windowsill, where the sun hit it just right, where her mother could see it, where Anna, if she ever came back, would see it too. It wasn't a symbol of surrender or betrayal. It was a symbol of choice, of memory, of the strange, messy, beautiful truth that even in the darkest places, sweetness can find you. And when it does, you don't have to reject it to prove you're strong. You just have to decide what you'll do with it.